Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Happy to be with you all today. I've got a message today, a couple of things I want to share. One thing you may have heard before, it's a fun story that has gone around online or in messages here and there for many years, but it highlights a really important point that I want to emphasize. We're getting to the end of 2017, and with that, there should be some real diligent thought into what 2018 looks like. So I want to talk a little bit about this principle of planning. I've also got a video that I hope to share, should technology work in my favor. I've not shared video via Zoom before, so I'm anticipating it should be fine. Fingers crossed that'll work. It's just a few minutes long. So I want to start by sharing this funny story about the bricklayer. You may have heard it in the past. The bricklayer who put down on his accident report the problem with his accident. He said, let me read this out to you. It's quite entertaining. He said, "Dear sir, I'm writing in response to your request for additional information in block 3 of the accident reporting form. I put poor planning as the cause of my accident. You asked for a fuller explanation, and I trust that the following details will be sufficient. I'm a bricklayer by trade. On the day of the accident, I was working alone on the roof of a new 6-story building. When I completed my work, I found I had some bricks left over, which, when weighed later, were found to weigh 240 pounds. Rather than carry the bricks down by hand, I decided to lower them in a barrel by using a pulley which was attached to the side of the building at the 6th floor. Securing the rope at ground level, I went up to the roof, swung the barrel out and loaded the bricks onto it. Then I went down and untied the rope, holding it tightly to ensure a slow descent of the 240 pounds of bricks. You will note on the accident reporting form that my weight is 135 pounds. You can anticipate what's going to happen. Due to my surprise at being jerked off the ground so suddenly, I lost my presence of mind and forgot to let go of the rope. Needless to say, I proceeded at a rapid rate up the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel, which was now proceeding downward at an equally impressive speed. This explains the fractured skull, minor abrasions, and the broken collarbone, as listed in section 3 of the accident reporting form. Slowed only slightly, I continued my rapid ascent, not stopping until my fingers on my right hand were 2 knuckles deep into the pulley, which I mentioned in paragraph 2 of this correspondence. Fortunately, by this time, I had regained my presence of mind and was able to hold tightly to the rope in spite of the excruciating pain I was now beginning to experience. At approximately the same time, however, the barrel of bricks hit the ground and the bottom fell out of the barrel. Now devoid of the weight of the bricks, the barrel weighed approximately 50 pounds. I refer you again to my weight. As you can imagine, I began a rapid descent down the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel coming up. This accounts for the 2 fractured ankles, broken tooth, and severe lacerations of my legs and lower body. Here my luck began to change slightly. What an optimist. The encounter with the barrel seemed to slow me enough to lessen my injuries when I fell into the pile of bricks, and fortunately only 3 vertebrae were cracked. What a positive outlook. I'm sorry to report, however, as I lay there on the pile of bricks, in pain, unable to move, and watching the empty barrel 6 stories above me, I again lost my composure and presence of mind and let go of the rope. And I lay there watching the empty barrel begin its journey back onto me. You may have heard that story before. A funny story that teaches, of course, the critical importance of being sure that we learn to plan well. Yeah, we can do the right things, but do them badly, and we get a very different result, don't we? I want to talk a little bit about planning today, and I also want to talk about an important relationship that we have with our own plans, because it's one thing to plan something well, but it's another thing to have personal conviction in our own plans and in our ability to execute those plans. So, on to my thought number 2. which I want to share with you now. This comment here comes from a man, William H. Bennett, and this was quoted back in 1974 on a talk he gave about inertia. And listen to what he says here. I find this very, very interesting when it comes to, again, this principle of planning and the role that we play in making our lives something special. He said, the greatest loss of power that there is the loss that results from the failure of individuals to reach their potential. Isn't that true? The greatest loss there is the loss of individuals' ability to reach their potential. There are many reasons for this, and I like this. Listen carefully as he lists them out. But if we reduce them to just a few common denominators, we can say that some of the more important ones are failure to do adequate, realistic planning. Isn't that interesting that he mentions that there in our ability to reach our potential? A lot of people would talk about natural skill or ability, perhaps, but he mentions first off our failure to do adequate, realistic planning. Two key words, adequate and realistic. Lack of desire, commitment, and dedication. Failure to use time effectively. And this is important, failure to correct one's mistakes. How often do we make the same mistakes over and over and fail to correct it? They call that, in accounting terms sometimes we feel like we're too far in with our plan to back out now. We've gone too far, I'll stay the course, even though we're not getting the results. In accounting terms, that's called a sunk cost, where you're not going to get back what you've invested in a task. But it's important to cut your losses and fix the problem versus keep going down the wrong path. And he gives a really wonderful example here after mentioning those. I'll mention them again, just to reiterate, because I can see some people are making notes here. He said some of the common denominators are a failure to do a lack of adequate planning, failure to use, lack of desire, commitment, and dedication, failure to use time effectively, and failure to correct one's mistakes. And listen to this beautiful metaphor. He says, let us think for a moment about the 26 letters in our English alphabet, just 26 of them. When you think about that, that's quite phenomenal, isn't it? That with that few number of letters, we have an entire language to communicate with each other. 26 letters. He says we can repeat them frontwards and backwards, but when we do, they have little meaning because they have not been put together with purpose or direction. But when they are given purposeful direction, the end product is great poetry and prose, heartwarming songs, sacred hymns, scripture, scientific writings, and so on. Such results do not come without effort. Ernest Hemingway, as we know, a very well-known best-selling author, is reported to have said that he found it necessary to rewrite the opening chapters of his books 45 to 50 times before he felt they were ready for public consumption. That's incredible, that, isn't it? 45 to 50 times. When he put forth that kind of effort, he was able to produce what many people consider to be easy reading. Isn't that interesting? Now, perhaps we can apply that principle to some of our upline that have been in the business for many years that make things look pretty easy. Have you ever watched perhaps an Olympic athlete stride across the finish line and it looks so effortless? How is it that they just kind of glide across that way? Or a concert pianist who was just in the zone, just playing, and it looks like just nothing. It's just ever so effortless as they play because they have practiced and practiced and practiced with purpose so much and so often and so frequently that it then becomes something quite different to the onlooker. So I think it's really important for each of us. He says, as it is here in using the letters of the alphabet in writing, so it is in putting things together in our lives. Action is all important, but action alone is not enough. We need the right kind of action, purposeful action. The things we should do add up in meaningful ways and contribute to rich, purposeful lives here on earth to bring about joy and happiness. The wrong kind of action, as we know, can bring about great destruction, which is not what we want to have. So we need to apply that principle of writing, of language, putting together those 26 letters to create wonderful poetry and prose, to apply that with the fundamental actions and behaviors that will lead to a purposeful, meaningful, successful, thriving business. And again, that means we may need to practice or re-practice. That might mean we need to course correct on things that we may have done wrong. Maybe as we look back over 2017, we might see some things that we go, I did a lot of that, but I didn't get the right result. What's the solution? Is it to do more of it? Or is it to do it a little differently? Now, that can be a challenging question because results take time to measure, right? So sometimes we don't want to nurture the plant and cultivate and nurture the ground only to keep yanking the seed up, though the little shoot baby tree here, lift it up out of the ground and have a look to see if it's growing, and then thrust it back down into the dirt again and try and cover it up and help it to grow. Doing that repeatedly is going to kill your garden. We don't want to do that. So it's a careful balance of being able to understand what takes time to measure and get the right result, and what action needs to change. One way to do it, I think, is self-reflection and clear, specific observation of what we're doing. Having a mentor in our business, working with upline, plays a significant part. Not just so we can turn around and say, I am talking to people every day, but tell me about these conversations. Where did you find these people? What is the relationship that you've got with them? What is the language that you're using? What is the message that you're giving? Are you doing the follow-up? Are you doing it in a timely fashion? Fill me in, give me context to these conversations. It helps to have an upline mentor that you can work with to give you some perspective and clarity on getting these right behaviors in the right order, going in the right direction. Another thing that I think that is really important is a willingness to fail, to pick ourselves up, and to keep trying. I want to share with you a video now. I had the privilege of meeting this man. He's a man. His name is Kyle Maynard. He was born a quadruple amputee, meaning when he was born, his arms stopped just above the elbow on both arms, and his legs stopped just above the knee on both legs. That was how he was born. I had the privilege of meeting him. I've got his book here, No Excuses, a phenomenal book. And like I said, in spite of not having hands, he autographed it. Isn't that incredible? He's been able to do some remarkable things with his life. He played for a school football team. He became a statewide champion wrestler in high school, which is just phenomenal. He's also gone into MMA, mixed martial arts fighting as well. He's become a mountaineer. Whatever it is that seems to be something that we would think would hold us back, he deliberately confronts and faces it head on. And he faces, it's not just facing fears. He faces what we would consider challenges or barriers for us to achieve anything. And he goes head on into that and says, I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to do it anyway. So with that being said, I want to do a share screen and share, it's a 5-minute video of him having just a brief conversation with us. If a couple of you could give me a thumbs up to make sure you see and hear the video, that will be helpful, because like I said, I've not shared video in the past. Okay. Oops. Let me check. Okay. Can you see positively positive? Yep.
When I was younger, my dad told me he believes the purpose of parenting was to make me and my sisters a little bit better version of him.
Oops.
And I think about the time when I was born. There was a lot of fear and doubt and frustration. I was born without my arms and legs. And I don't have any kids of my own. But I do have some pretty amazing parents that had an attitude that they weren't going to allow that to go and control and dictate and affect my life in any major negative way. Doctors told them a lot of things. I might be dependent on their help living at home the rest of my life, maybe dependent on prosthetics or other devices, that it would be very expensive. They really didn't have an education. They didn't have a whole lot of money. There was, I'm sure, a lot of hard times early on. But they made that decision early on that they weren't going to just to allow me to live a different life, that they're going to go and treat me as normal. I have a baby niece now. She's 8 months old, and her name's Kinley. I see Kinley reaching out to go and try to grab the spoon when she's being fed. When I'm watching her do that, I thought about the first couple times that I would go and reach out to try to go and grab the spoon, and then how hard that must have been for them to see me fail a whole lot. Learning how to pick up a spoon, holding it just between the ends of my elbows, like the way that I hold a spoon now. I'm sure it must have been hard. It was their natural instinct to want to come in and try to help me out at first, but I had to go through those failures to learn how to do it. And some things came natural, some things didn't. But now in my life, I really don't have that many adaptations for things because of what they taught me early on. Learned how to eat with normal spoon and fork, just holding the silverware between the ends of my arms and swinging it around and go and scoop the food up. Learned how to shave kind of the same way, holding the shaver the ends of my arms, writing with a normal pen, pencil, holding it between the ends of my arms. Type about 50 words a minute on a normal keyboard. Now live in a 3-story townhouse on my own. My bedroom's on the top floor. I've got a stool to go and get up to the bathroom sink. And my vehicle that I drive, I've got a Dodge Durango. It has lifted up pedals, extensions on the pedals. I use my left foot for the brake, my right foot for the gas. It's a normal steering wheel. Put the seat up a little bit closer to the wheel. And it's become my favorite hobby to thoroughly freak people out in the Starbucks drive-thru. Pass my credit card real quick to go and pay for the coffee and see people like kind of freak out. Like, whoa! Throw coffee all over the place. But to me, they encouraged me to not focus on the disability. And I think a lot of times we get caught up in looking at the wrong things. And as adults, for me with my niece, maybe for you and your kids or your grandkids, I mean, they will watch you to see what you're focusing on. And I think if they'd helped me with everything, I wouldn't have been able to learn how to do things on my own. I had to go through and learn how to fail a lot at first. The very first time I got myself dressed, I was 16 years old. It was my summer going into summer break going into my junior year of high school. I was sitting at home in my sweatpants, and my best friend Joey calls me up, and he says that him and his mom wanted to come and pick me up and take me out to a movie in like an hour. Sitting at home alone, and my mom was 5 minutes away at a local park watching my sisters play in a softball tournament. And I told her, I said, there is absolutely no way I'm asking my best friend or my best friend's mom to get me dressed. She said, let me call you back in a couple minutes. 5 minutes later, she called back and she said, I'm sorry, I can't leave. You're gonna have to find a way to do this on your own. So I had to go through a grief cycle pretty quick. You know, I had 32 seconds to be sad and maybe another 29 seconds to be really ticked off at her, and had to figure out how to do this. Now the clock's ticking, so I've got an hour window to go in to make this happen. So I went and started with my left sock and battled with the sock, trying to get this on my foot. And finally found some kind of tool. I knew that there would be some kind of tool to use to get the sock on. My dad was an engineer and always helped me think outside of the box. So I went and found some paper clips and undid the paper clips in my mouth to shape a hook. So I stuffed the paper clip inside the sock and I just fought with this thing for like 30 minutes to get that first sock on. The next sock I was able to figure out in about 15 minutes and use my same paperclip system for that, and went and leaned back and stuck the paperclip inside the zipper of my pants and used that to go and zip my pants up for the first time. That whole process altogether took like an hour. Now when I get dressed on my own, it takes maybe a minute. If I'm just throwing on my socks and throwing on my pants, zipping up my pants, I don't use the same adaptation. I figured out how to do it just with the ends of my arms, and maybe it takes a minute. But when we start anything, it's really, really hard at first. But I think in order for our next generation to be a better version of ourselves, then we do have to learn how to fail. And sometimes failure is not fun, but I believe it is the only way to go outside of our comfort zone and to learn, is to be knocked down and to learn how to go and to stand back up. My name is Kyle Maynard, and I am positively positive.
Well, I'm not sure what you thought of that video, but my goodness, what an inspiration that gentleman is in showing us the importance of perseverance. Can you imagine being 16 by the time you got yourself dressed by yourself for the very first time? Can you imagine that? That would have been just terrible. The amount of patience that he must have learned to develop over the course of his life, but also the perseverance. What struck me, and the reason I wanted to share that with you today, was because of that last point that he emphasized, which was we've got to be comfortable and willing enough to fail in order for us to become stronger, and critically for the next generation to become stronger, so that they can see what we are focusing on as individuals. When the going gets tough for us, what do we focus on? Do we focus on the problem, or do we focus on finding a solution? I think that's really important, isn't it? He got very solution oriented. And look now, I find it remarkable that without proper use of regular arms or legs, he can live unaided with very little adjustment to his home environment in a 3-story house by himself. And he said, why is that possible? Because of what he was taught when he was younger. Yeah. And I think that's really important. So my message today has kind of got a few different points. One, it's really important for us as we go into 2017 to plan purposefully a successful and thriving 2018. Think of it like the letters of the alphabet. With all of the different activities that we have in NECAN, if we don't put it to order, and if we don't put purpose behind it, then the activities will be quite meaningless and we won't get much from it. We can speak to people here and there, maybe sponsor someone here or there, maybe gather a customer here or there, and consider ourselves in the business, active and engaged. But if we're not doing those things on purpose, then they won't actually create a meaningful outcome. It'll just be stuff. We need to be a little bit more Ernest Hemingway-esque in the way that we approach our business. 45 to 50 times he recrafted. I'm not suggesting that we look at what we're doing and repeat or recraft and reshape 45 to 50 times. We don't need to be world-class poets or authors in our business. We just need to be able to do a little better. And if we can just craft with a little bit more focus, get that message a little bit more on point, evaluate, course correct when needed, be willing to feel the pain of failure, but not let that give us cause to give up. Give that some impetus within us to move forward and keep doing a little bit better. Then I think we can go on and not just become stronger versions of ourselves, but also through that process, show the next generation in our organization and the other generations that are within our tree what it takes to build a business. One of the reasons I think example in leadership is so important is because through the process of that example, we have actually learned the lessons needed to teach effectively. It's one thing to have the words, but if you haven't done the time, if you haven't gone through the process, you don't know all the nuances that are made up in that whole process of recrafting 45, 50 times over in order to get that perfect sentence. Yeah, we need to go through that and understand the journey so that we can say to our teammates and our friends, this is what is required, and that's okay, because look at what the results are that can come as a consequence. So I think that's really important. I think that is where wisdom is truly born, in the furnace of practice and repractice. I hope we can have a great 2018, that we put some time into planning our experience, that we have purpose in our cause, that we take all these different letters and create some wonderful poetry for next year. I think there's going to be music made next year. I really do. And I look forward to seeing what happens. So thank you all very much. And I look forward to speaking with you all next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ben.